The silence in the grand mansion was once his favorite sound. It meant control. It meant power. But ever since that child entered his life, silence had become a stranger, unreachable, almost mythological. Li Jun sat at the head of a long marble dining table, disheveled and slightly dazed. The plate in front of him was untouched. Steam no longer rose from the soup, and the perfectly grilled galbi stared back at him, as if mocking his incompetence. From the next room came another shrill cry. Again, he muttered, his voice a rasp of despair and frustration. His jaw clenched as he ran a hand through his tousled black hair. The nanny, the fifth one this week, emerged from the hallway, her face pale, her eyes panicked. "Sir, he won't stop crying." "I noticed," Li Jun snapped. He stood abruptly, the chair screeching against the polished floors. Without another word, he stormed down the hallway. Inside the large nursery, the 3-month-old infant, Minjun, was red in the face, his tiny fists trembling in the air. The crib was the finest money could buy. The mobile spun above him, Mozart's lullaby playing faintly. None of it mattered. "Sure." Li Jun lifted the baby with stiff arms, pacing the room. "What do you want, huh? I gave you everything. What else?" The wail intensified, echoing off the chandeliered ceiling. That was how the day went. And the day before. And the week before. Board meetings disrupted. Investor calls cut short. Headlines blaring. The mysterious crying CEO, Li Jun, spotted cradling baby at midnight on company balcony. He didn't care what the world thought. But deep down, he knew he was losing control. At first, he had considered adoption. Or hiring a surrogate guardian. But something about the baby, those piercing brown eyes that mirrored his, tied him down in a way nothing else had. He couldn't let go. Not completely. When the pediatrician recommended switching formulas, he had bought every brand on the market. Nothing worked. The lactation specialist said, some babies simply need the comfort and nutrients from a mother's breast milk. So he bought frozen breast milk. From certified milk banks. Imported the best. Still, the child wailed. Was it punishment? Was this his karma? It was on a humid Tuesday morning that he found himself in the hallway of Sarung's Seoul Medical Center, the infant once again screaming his lungs out in his arms. Every nurse that passed looked at him with sympathy. Or fear. Or both. He was Li Jun, after all. The man whose cold glares could tank stocks and who now paced like a madman with a screaming child on his shoulder. Dr. Nam, the hospital director, intercepted him. Sir, please give us time. We'll run the necessary scans. I don't want scans, Jun snapped. I want peace. I want silence. I want someone to fix this. Dr. Nam gave a hesitant nod. We have a new nurse. OBG unit. Maybe she can assist in calming him for vitals check. She's surprisingly gifted with infants. Li Jun raised an eyebrow. Gifted. You'll see. In the neonatal unit, Blessing adjusted her scrubs and twisted her long braids into a bun. She had arrived in Korea 2 years ago on an international nursing program, quickly gaining attention for her warmth, precision, and refusal to treat patients like statistics. When she heard the scream echoing down the corridor, she froze. Again, she muttered under her breath, heart tugging. That poor baby. Moments later, Li Jun stormed in, child in his arms, dark circles beneath his striking eyes. The contrast was cinematic, his sharp black suit, lean frame, chiseled jawline, and the red-faced, wailing baby flailing in his grasp. He stopped when he saw her. Tall. Dark-skinned. Stunning. Her face was calm, framed by those thick twists that bounced as she moved toward him. Sir, she said softly. May I? He blinked. May you what? Hold him. He hesitated, then handed her the child. What happened next silenced the entire hallway. She lifted Minjun, nestled him against her, bounced gently, and began humming a soft African lullaby. The crying lessened, then stopped. Li Jun's mouth parted in disbelief. What did you do? Blessing smiled faintly. He's hungry, but not for what you've been giving him. Her eyes flicked to the chart in her hand. She frowned. He's severely dehydrated. Malnourished. Sir, this is beyond a formula issue. I've tried everything. Even breast milk. The banked ones. Organic. Premium. His tone hardened. He refuses them all. She looked into the baby's eyes, then into his. I shouldn't, but may I try something? Try what? A pause. Her voice lowered. Let me feed him. Blessing had never imagined she'd be in this situation, seated in the private neonatal consultation room, holding the baby of a Korean CEO, the infant suckling softly from her exposed breast, as the CEO himself stood a mere 5 feet away, frozen in disbelief. It was supposed to be a temporary solution. A nurse's instinct. A human reaction. But now, something about this moment felt too intimate. Too raw. Lee Jun stared, eyes wide, unable to speak. He'd seen money change lives, seen women throw themselves at him for fame, even seen his own ex cry crocodile tears. But this gentle African nurse, cradling his son like she was born to, feeding him without demand, without condition, shook him in places no stock market ever could. His voice finally emerged, husky and broken. He stopped crying. Blessing smiled softly, not looking up, because he finally feels safe. Warm. Held. Lee Jun lowered his head. Shame prickled behind his ears. I'm sorry you had to do this. I know it's highly inappropriate. I know, she replied, still calm. And you're not the first to apologize for something they couldn't fix. Silence sat between them for a while. The air was thick, not with discomfort, but with something fragile. Sacred. Then, as the baby released her with a small, satisfied sigh and closed his tiny fists in sleep, Blessing gently adjusted her blouse. She handed the baby back, wrapped in a hospital blanket, his lips still puckered. Lee Jun took his son like he was made of glass, stunned at how light and peaceful he suddenly felt. He's smiling. Blessing nodded. That's a post-feeding reflex, but I like to think he knows peace now. They both chuckled softly like old friends. Lee Jun looked at her for a moment longer, then spoke. Do you have a boyfriend? Her head snapped up. Excuse me? I'm asking. A beat of silence. Then her brows furrowed. You think because I fed your child you now have a right to… No, he interrupted. I need your help. And maybe more. 2 days later at Lee Jun's mansion, Gangnam District. The entire staff had questions, and they whispered them in the halls. Is she the new nanny? No. She's a nurse. Then why is she living here? She breastfed his son. The CEO trusts her. Blessing walked through the glass hallway, ignoring the eyes. She was used to it. As the only African woman in the neighborhood, she drew stares even before this bizarre job began. Lee Jun had offered her a temporary live-in position. Help him stabilize the baby. Help him understand him. No title. No conditions. Just a desperate man trying to keep his son alive. At first she refused, but she remembered how light the baby had felt against her chest. How his lips had searched hungrily, as if he'd known her his whole life. And she remembered the way Lee Jun looked at her. Not with lust, not with pity, but with something deeper. So she said yes. Why are you doing this? He asked that evening as they sat in the garden, Minjun asleep in a stroller beside them. Because he needs me, she said. And what about me? Lee Jun asked, his voice low. She turned toward him. The wind caught her twists and blew them slightly across her cheeks. Do you need me too, CEO Lee? He hesitated. Then, I haven't needed anyone in years. But you walked in, and everything stopped falling apart. Their eyes locked. Then she pulled back, blinking fast. Don't confuse gratitude with affection. You're vulnerable. You're lonely. You need sleep and support, not romance. I haven't had sleep in 3 months, he said, inching closer. But you gave me 5 hours of it yesterday. And I dreamed about you. She inhaled sharply. That's not fair. Nothing about this is fair. But it's real. She stood abruptly. I need to check his bottle. Blessing. Good night, sir. She disappeared through the patio doors, heart hammering. It happened 3 nights later. She was in the nursery, humming that same African lullaby, gently rubbing Minjun's tummy. He was beginning to accept bottle-fed breast milk now, hers. She donated daily at the hospital milk lab, secretly adding her name to the donor list for his batch. It was unofficial, but necessary. Lee Jun entered silently, barefoot, in a white linen shirt and gray pajama pants. He watched her for a moment, then whispered, "You're an angel." Blessing smiled faintly. "Then why do I feel like falling?" He walked up behind her, slowly. "Because I'm about to catch you." She turned, and there he was, inches away, breathing the same air. "Tell me to stop," he said. "And I will." She looked into his eyes, those same eyes Minjun had, and whispered, "I won't." And then he kissed her. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't lust. It was a thank you, a homecoming, a silent promise. But every fairy tale has its thorn. The next day, articles began to circulate. CEO Lee's secret affair with African nanny? Exclusive photos of mysterious woman at mansion. His board of directors panicked. His ex-girlfriend's mother threatened legal action. Haun may not have wanted the child, the lawyer said, but she's still the mother on record. If Blessing continues this, she could lose everything. So could you. Blessing was called into the HR office of the hospital. Your image as a nurse must remain neutral, they warned. This controversy must end. And then came the worst news. Haun was back. And she wanted her son. The silence in the mansion was deceptive. It wasn't the peace Lee Jun had once longed for. No, it was the sharp, eerie quiet of something about to break. Lee Jun sat alone in the expansive study, his fingers steepled against his lips, eyes glued to the legal documents spread across his mahogany desk. At the top of the letterhead, Kim Haun v. Lee Jun, custody petition. It felt like a bad dream. A surreal glitch in the peace he and Blessing had so carefully nurtured. She had returned. Haun, the woman who disappeared 3 weeks after giving birth. 3 months ago. You're leaving me now? Haun, her figure slim even after labor, barely met his eyes. She was adjusting her designer sunglasses as she zipped her rose-pink suitcase. The newborn was asleep in his hospital crib, completely unaware. I told you, June. I didn't sign up to be a mother. Not like this. I wanted to abort, remember? June's voice cracked with anger. But you didn't. You let him be born. Because your parents paid me not to terminate, she said without guilt. Now they're gone, and I want my life back. She'd vanished after that. No calls. No letters. And now, as if summoned by a cruel twist of fate, she was back, demanding everything she abandoned. Blessing could feel it. Something had changed in June's energy. He hadn't touched his food. He kept checking his phone. He barely looked at Minjun. When she walked into the study with the baby nestled in her arms, June didn't even look up. I made him laugh, she said, forcing a light tone. Still nothing. Lee Jun. He looked up finally, eyes shadowed. She's back. Blessing stilled. Who? Haun. Her heart sank. The mother, she whispered. He nodded once. And she's filed for custody. Blessing looked down at Minjun, then slowly sat in the armchair. But why now? I don't know. His voice cracked. Publicity? Guilt? Maybe to prove she can still control my life. She hesitated. And if she wins? The question hung in the air like a guillotine. I don't know who I'll be without him, he whispered. Haun didn't wait long. 2 days later, she walked into the mansion like she had never left, clad in luxury, perfume overpowering, heels clacking across the marble floor. Blessing answered the door. For a full 5 seconds, they just stared at each other. You must be the wet nurse, Haun sneered. I'm his caregiver, Blessing replied, calm but firm. Haun's eyes scanned her up and down. You breastfed my child. You abandoned your child. A dangerous silence. June walked in then, Minjun in his arms, already beginning to fuss. Haun's eyes flicked toward the baby. He looks so healthy now. Blessing straightened. He almost died. You'd know that if you stayed. Haun smiled tightly. You're quite bold. Let's see how long you last once I get my son back. That night, June found Blessing in the nursery, rocking Minjun, even though he was already asleep. She wants to ruin everything, he murmured behind her. Blessing didn't turn. She's his biological mother. That counts for something in court. I don't care about court. I care about you. About him. She finally looked at him. Then say it. He moved closer. I love you, Blessing. I didn't want to feel it, but I do. I see you in my son's smile. I hear you in the silence that followed his first real meal. You changed my life. Her throat tightened. I'm just scared, June. I don't want to lose this. Any of it. He leaned in. Then fight with me. Be his real mother. Stay. Then his lips were on hers, soft, desperate, warm. She didn't pull away. The custody hearing was brutal. Haun's lawyers painted Blessing as an opportunist. A foreign nurse who inappropriately breastfed someone else's child and seduced the grieving father. Blessing remained calm, but tears stung her eyes as she sat behind June, listening to the slander. Then came the moment of truth. The judge, a middle-aged man with no-nonsense glasses, leaned forward. Mr. Lee, who has been the child's sole provider for the past 3 months. I have. Who was present for his hospitalization, nutrition, and emotional care? I was, but she was everything I couldn't be. June stood and pointed toward Blessing. She saved his life. She gave him what even money couldn't buy. She gave him herself. Blessing's mouth fell open. June's voice cracked. I'm not asking the court to punish Haun. I'm asking it to do right by the child. Don't take him from the only love he's ever known. Weeks passed. Anxiety ruled their days. Blessing moved out temporarily, hoping to avoid more press scandal. Until one evening, June showed up at her small apartment, baby in one arm, verdict letter in the other. You're not going to believe this, he whispered. She opened it. Read it. Then covered her mouth. Custody granted to Mr. Lee June.
Full. Permanent.
They married quietly months later. No extravagant wedding. Just close friends, baby Minjun in his new blue tuxedo, and tears in Blessing's eyes as she became both wife and mother. That night, in the privacy of their bedroom, June whispered against her lips. I don't want a nanny. I don't want a wet nurse. I want you, Blessing. I want the woman who saved my son and healed me. She smiled, pulling him down into the sheets. Then have me. All of me. Their lips met again. And this time, there was no fear, no confusion, just fire,
Passion. Trust.
2 months later, the cherry blossoms bloomed like they were celebrating something, and they were. Blessing, now Blessing Lee, stepped out into the garden of their private villa, wearing a soft white hanbok-style dress June had gifted her. Her black twists were longer now, adorned with pearl pins, flowing gently in the breeze. In her arms, Minjun giggled, his cheeks round and healthy, eyes alert and joyful. Everything had changed. June was no longer the sleep-deprived CEO known for appearing at board meetings with a crying baby on his shoulder. He now arrived hand in hand with his stunning wife, with calm in his step and fire in his gaze. Some called it the power of love. Others, luck. He called it blessing. Literally. But behind the calm, something darker stirred beneath the surface. Blessing had noticed it. The way June sometimes stared at the door when it was closed, or checked the locks 3 times before bed. How he'd flinch whenever his phone rang from an unknown number. Is there something you're not telling me? She asked one evening, when Minjun had finally gone to sleep. He hesitated, ran a hand through his hair. There's something from my past.
Before the baby. Before you.
It's unresolved. She waited. There was a woman, he said finally. Before Haun.
She was obsessed.
Not just with me, but with my family's wealth. I cut her off when I learned she was pregnant and lying about it. Blessing blinked. Lying about pregnancy? She faked it, bought an ultrasound printout. And when I called her bluff, she threatened to ruin me. Blessing's jaw tensed. Where is she now? She disappeared. But recently, I've been getting photos.
Of you.
Of the baby. Someone's watching us. Blessing stood, her heart thundering. We go to the police. I already did. They found nothing. But I have security watching you and I can't. And my legal team is tracing the digital footprints. Blessing exhaled. No more secrets, June. Never again. They kissed slowly, clinging to each other in the kitchen under the warm golden lights. June's grandmother, the revered Madam Kim, had finally asked to meet the African daughter-in-law. Blessing wore her traditional Nigerian iro and blouse to the gathering, mixing it with Korean etiquette. She bowed low, spoke respectfully, but kept her eyes strong and her voice confident. Madam Kim raised an eyebrow. You're not what I expected. I get that a lot, Blessing smiled. You breastfed the heir, she said flatly. I did. You love him more than I love myself. You will not be accepted easily. I don't expect to be. Madam Kim stared at her for a long, uncomfortable moment. Then she poured Blessing tea. June, watching from across the room, exhaled for the first time in 10 minutes. It was subtle at first. Blessing slept more, got nauseous from kimchi stew, missed her cycle. She took the test 3 times before she finally told June. They sat on the bed together, silent. I'm pregnant, she said softly. His eyes widened. His hand covered his mouth. Then he laughed, loudly, uncontrollably, before pulling her into his arms. Are you scared? She asked, muffled against his shoulder. Yes, he admitted. But not because of the baby. Because I never imagined I could be this happy. They kissed longer this time. His hand slid over her belly. Our baby, he whispered. It happened 3 weeks later. They returned from dinner to find their bedroom ransacked.
Drawers pulled.
Clothes shredded. A single photo torn in half, one of Blessing holding Minjun. There was no note. Just a lipstick smear across their wedding photo. June's security team searched the estate, but the perpetrator had vanished. The same night, Blessing received a private message. You stole him from me. Let's see how much you're willing to lose now. The face behind the account, Yumin, the woman from June's past. Obsessive, dangerous. But she had made one mistake, leaving behind fingerprints on the mirror. She was arrested 3 days later in Busan. Stalking, harassment, breaking and entering. The evidence was undeniable. But the trauma lingered. It took time for Blessing to feel safe again. But June never left her side. She had nightmares. He held her. She doubted her place. He reminded her, you are my beginning and end. She feared for their children. He built a new security wing for their home. Love wasn't just sweet words. It was presence, patience, protection. 1 year later, the camera crew filmed from a respectful distance. The garden was decorated in soft whites and blues. Blessing stood beneath the archway, baby bump proudly showing beneath her lavender dress. Minjun ran barefoot across the grass, giggling in a tiny tuxedo. June gave a heartfelt speech at their son's first birthday. To the child who turned a cold man warm, to the woman who gave a broken heart a home. Thank you. The crowd applauded.
Tears fell.
And later, as the sun set behind their mansion, Lee June and Blessing stood on their balcony. Her head on his chest, his hand on her stomach. This time, he whispered, we're doing everything right. Together. And somewhere inside her womb, a flutter answered him.